The woman who gave her life to her husband was the only one not allowed into his world. Elaine Carter didn't expect red carpets, just a smile, maybe a thanks, honey, for the lunch she made by hand. But a metal sign at the gate sliced through that hope. Authorized personnel only. "I'm his wife," she said, the box trembling in her grip. The guard barely looked up. He gave a laugh that stung more than a shout. "Ma'am, I see his wife every day, and she's right there." Elaine turned heel silk youth and the lobby lit up to greet the other Mrs. Reed. No one looked at her. Heat rushed to her face. Shame then, confusion, then icy clarity. In that moment she realized she didn't exist. Not to them, not to him, and not in a world where the woman who built the man wasn't even allowed past the door. If any part of you recognizes that feeling, subscribe and stay with this story today. Elaine walked out of the building with the lunchbox still warm in her hands. The plaza felt too bright, too open, like she had just walked out of a church after a funeral. Only this time the funeral was for a marriage that nobody had bothered to announce. She reached her car and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Her fingers stayed locked around the container he liked. Garlic and herbs fogged the plastic. It should have smelled like love. It smelled like a joke. Thomas's laugh replayed in her head. So did the word "ma'am," stretched with pity. For 20 years, she had stayed up late, reheated dinners, canceled her own plans so he could chase something big. She had told herself it was partnership. If they don't see me as his wife, she thought, then who am I? Elaine looked at the mirrored glass of Reed Global. It threw back the image of a tired, middle-aged woman nobody recognized. She did not storm back in. She lifted her phone instead and fixed her eyes on the doors. She would wait. She wanted to see exactly how the real Mrs. Reed left his world. Elaine lowered her seat a little and pretended to scroll her messages. The camera app sat ready under her thumb. Minutes dragged. Her heart thudded in her ears. Then the doors slid open. The young woman from the lobby stepped out again alone this time. Tailored dress, narrow heels, that same easy stride of someone who knew the building belonged to her. Sienna walked toward the garage entrance. A black leather bag swung at her side. Elaine's stomach clenched. She had seen that handbag on Jonathan's laptop months ago. He had closed the screen when she walked in, then claimed it was a client gift. Elaine lifted her phone. One shot of Sienna's face. One of the bag. One of the building in the background. When Sienna's car beeped, Elaine zoomed in and caught the license plate, too. Pieces started snapping together. Late nights, hotel receipts, mysterious conferences, credit card charges that never quite matched the stories. She looked at the lunchbox on the passenger seat. It no longer felt like a gesture of love. It felt like proof of how long she had been playing the fool. Elaine opened her contacts and scrolled down to a name she had never deleted. Derek Lawson. She sat in the parking lot for a full minute staring at the name. Her thumb hovered, then pressed. The line rang twice. Lawson. The voice was rougher than she remembered. "It's Elaine," she said. "Elaine Carter." A pause. Then softer. "Been a long time." The words tumbled out. The guard. The other Mrs. Reed. The handbag that should have been hers, the photos, the plate number. Derek didn't swear. He didn't gasp. He just listened, then asked one clean question. "What do you want, Elaine? Proof so you can confront him? Or proof so you can leave?" Elaine looked down at her wedding band. The gold was dull from years of dishes and laundry. On the seat beside her, the lunch had cooled into something heavy and sad. "I want to disappear completely," she said. Silence again, this time with a hint of respect. They agreed to meet. Elaine drove to a cheap hotel off the highway and checked in under the name on her birth certificate. No Reed, just Carter. Her phone buzzed. Jonathan. Again and again. "Where are you? I'm worried. Call me back." Elaine turned the screen over and let it ring. The woman who always fixed everything had just stepped off the stage. The hotel room was small and scrubbed too hard. White sheets, thin towels, a print of a beach she would never visit hung crooked on the wall. Elaine set her small suitcase on the stand and opened it. a few changes of clothes, her mother's necklace, a worn photo album, the things a person grabbed when they weren't sure if they were coming back. Her phone kept buzzing on the nightstand. Jonathan's number, then friends, then Madison. She let each call slide to voicemail. Jonathan's messages came first smooth and familiar, concerned, then irritated, then scared. Elaine. This isn't funny. Call me back. Elaine, I'm going to call the police. You're scaring Madison. She lay on her back and watched shadows from passing cars move across the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that lobby. The way people had turned toward Sienna and straight through her. Who was that girl? What had he promised her? What lies had he wrapped in that same voice he once used on Elaine? By dawn, exhaustion finally settled into something colder. She wasn't just hiding. She was repositioning. The diner Derek chose sat on the edge of town, and by mid-morning she was on her way there. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and old grease. Red vinyl seats, chrome edges dulled by years of elbows. Derek Lawson sat in the corner booth back to the wall, eyes on the door. He had more gray in his hair now, deeper lines at the edges of his mouth, but the same steady gaze. Elaine slid into the seat across from him and pushed her phone toward him. Photos of Sienna, the car, the building. She told him everything from the sign at the door to the moment she'd walked out with her heart in pieces and a lunchbox in her hands. Derek took a small notebook from his pocket and wrote in a shorthand she couldn't follow. No judgment, no comfort, just facts. When she finished, he leaned back. "Do you want to save this marriage?" he asked, "or burn it down?" Elaine felt the answer rise before she could swallow it. "I want the truth," she said. "All of it. Then I'll decide what burns." He warned her. It would cost money. It would cost time. It might cost whatever version of her life she still believed in. Elaine nodded. For once, she was willing to pay the price for herself. 3 days later, Derek knocked on her hotel door with a thick envelope in his hand. He stepped inside and laid the contents on the bed. Photos, screenshots, printouts. Elaine saw Sienna at a townhouse front door, keys in hand. Sienna laughing at a patio table at an expensive restaurant. Sienna walking into Reed Global with a badge around her neck, Jonathan's hand on the small of her back. Then came the documents. Property deeds with Sienna's name. A beach house, a rental condo. All bought with money traced back to accounts Elaine shared with her husband. She stared at the numbers, at the way the balances in her own statements had dipped over the last year. Little declines she'd chalked up to market changes. Derek dropped one more page on the pile. An email printout, a social media screenshot. With her, he said quietly, "He's a widower. His first wife died in a car accident last year." Elaine read the line twice. The words blurred. He had killed her on paper. If he buried me in a story, she whispered, what else is he willing to do? He didn't cry. Something inside her hardened instead. Derek spread out a second set of pages. This time, the numbers weren't just personal. They belonged to Reed Global. Wire transfers to shell companies. Invoices padded just enough to slip past busy eyes. Clients charged for services that never appeared in any report. "This isn't just cheating on you," Derek said. "This is cheating on everyone." He pointed with his pen. "He's bleeding his own company, moving assets off the books, setting up a soft landing somewhere else." Elaine followed the arrows on the page. Money flowed in circles, then slid out toward accounts in places she'd only ever seen in travel magazines. Her life had helped build that company. The nights alone, the birthdays missed, the patience, the grace. Now he was hollowing it out from the inside. "So, he lies to me," she said slowly to our daughter, to his board, to his clients. Derek nodded. "Men like this don't draw lines. They just see what they can get away with." He mentioned a name. A rival who had lost more than one deal to Jonathan over the years. Richard Hale. Derek said, "If anyone will happily aim this at Reed Global, it's him." Elaine realized she was standing at a crossroads. She could stay the quiet victim, or she could become the reason Jonathan finally bled. The cafe was tucked into a quiet street far from the glass towers downtown. No logos, no suits, just low music and chipped mugs. Elaine arrived early and chose a table near the back. When Richard Hale walked in, she recognized him from business articles she had skimmed over the years. Younger than Jonathan, sharper around the edges. He glanced around, then sat across from her. "You said your name was Elaine Carter," he began. "You also said you have information on Reed Global." She slid a folder toward him. "Copies only, never originals." He flipped through the pages, expression shifting from polite interest to focus. Transfers, shell companies, assets that didn't match public reports. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "That's not the important question," she replied. "The important question is whether it's useful. If this is accurate," he said, "your husband has been lying to shareholders for years." Elaine held his gaze. "If it helps you investigate. If you prove I'm right, we'll talk about what you owe me later." She stood before he could press further. For the first time, Jonathan wasn't the only one playing a game behind closed doors. She had just loaded his rival's gun. The gallery shimmered with soft light and whispered money. Paintings lined the walls. Waiters floated by with champagne flutes. Elaine adjusted the strap of her red dress and lifted her chin. The stylist had covered the silver in her hair. Her lipstick was bolder than she'd worn in years. This wasn't about winning him back. This was about looking him in the eye without flinching. She saw him before he saw her. Jonathan entered with the same easy confidence he wore on magazine covers. At his side, Sienna moved like she had been born to this world. His hand rested at the small of her back, fingers spread in that possessive, casual way Elaine knew too well. Elaine stepped behind a tall sculpture and watched. They greeted donors. They laughed with board members. To anyone else, they were a perfect power couple. But Elaine's focus drifted to one small detail. Every few minutes, almost unconsciously, Sienna's hand slid to her own stomach. A light touch, a protective one. Elaine's breath caught. She remembered that gesture. She had made it herself once before, a whispered conversation in a kitchen where Jonathan had said, "Not now. It's not the right time." Now he had decided the timing was perfect. Just not with her. As the night wore on, Elaine saw something shift. Jonathan stood near the bar with a group of donors, Sienna at his side, when a woman in a black dress approached. Older, elegant, composed in a way money couldn't buy. Jonathan's shoulders tightened the second he noticed her. She touched his arm, said a few quiet words, then glanced once at Sienna. Whatever she said made his jaw clench. He murmured something back and guided Sienna away a little too fast. Curiosity burned through Elaine's shock. She slipped out a side door and waited. Moments later, the woman in black stepped outside alone. "Excuse me," Elaine said. "Are you connected to James Hart?" "He used to work with my husband." The woman studied her face. "James was my husband," she said. "I'm Evelyn Hart." Elaine held her gaze. "I don't think the official story about him is the whole truth." Evelyn's eyes sharpened. She pulled a card from her clutch. "If you really want to know what your husband is capable of," she said, "call me." Back at the hotel, Elaine kicked off her heels and let herself sink onto the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed before she could catch her breath. "Derek," she answered, already bracing. "I pulled the records on your house in Pinecrest," he said. "There was a refinance last month." "That's impossible," she said. "I never signed. I've got the documents in front of me. They have your name, your signature, but it's not yours, Elaine." Her stomach dropped. The house where they had painted Madison's room. The kitchen where they'd hosted birthdays. The garden she had planted. All of it used like a poker chip she didn't even know was on the table. "That's forgery," Derek added. "Gives you leverage. Also tells me he's getting desperate." Elaine stared at the blank hotel wall. If Jonathan would fake her name to mortgage their home, what else would he fake? What else was he willing to destroy to save himself? 2 days later, the front desk called up to say she had mail. A neighbor had forwarded an envelope. Elaine opened it at the small desk by the window. Gold-embossed lettering. Cream cardstock. Madison Reed and James Matthews. Her daughter's wedding invitation. Her vision blurred. The date sat in the center like a cruel joke. The same season her own marriage had quietly died on someone else's paperwork. That night, Madison's name lit up her phone. "Mom, finally," her daughter said, breathless. "Dad says you needed space. Are you guys okay? You're still coming to the wedding, right? I need you there." Elaine swallowed. "I'll be there," she said. "I promise." She did not say, "Your father faked my signature. He told another woman, I'm dead." She did not say, "The family you think you have is already gone." The choice sat heavy in her chest. Protect Madison's heart now, or tell her everything and shatter her world before the vows. Elaine chose to wait. Her child deserved one unbroken day. They met at a boutique downtown, racks of soft fabrics and careful lighting turning every mirror into a little lie. Madison spun in a pale blue dress and laughed. "You like it? I want you to look elegant, Mom. You and Dad at the head table still in love after all these years. That's the goal." Each word cut cleaner than a knife. Elaine smiled anyway. "You look beautiful," she said, "and that's what everyone will see." While the clerk pinned the hem, Madison watched herself in the mirror. "I want what you and Dad have," she said. "A marriage that lasts. A real partnership." Elaine felt her throat tighten. She waited until they were at a quiet cafe, napkins, unfolded water glasses sweating on the table. She took her daughter's hand. "Whatever happens in life," she said, "remember this. You never have to stay anywhere that shrinks who you are." Madison frowned. "That's a little intense for dress shopping, Mom." Maybe Elaine said, "Just promise me you'll remember it." "I promise," Madison replied, still puzzled. A seed had been planted. Evelyn Hart's house surprised her. Elaine had expected gloom. Closed curtains, walls crowded with clippings. Instead, sunlight poured through clean windows. Family photos lined the mantel. It looked like a life someone had fought to keep orderly. They sat at the kitchen table. Evelyn disappeared for a moment, then returned dragging a banker's box. "5 years of my life," she said, setting it down. Inside were folders labeled with dates and names. James's handwritten notes, bank statements, printed emails, a timeline scrawled along the inside lid. "James and your husband built Reed Global together," Evelyn said. "They were partners, best friends." He started to notice things. Numbers that didn't add up. Clients charged twice. Money going where it shouldn't. Elaine listened, hands folded to keep them from shaking. 2 days after he told Jonathan he was going to demand a full audit, Evelyn continued. "I found him dead in our bed. They called it a heart attack." Her mouth tightened. "His doctor said he had the heart of a man 20 years younger. No history, no warning." Another mask slipped off Jonathan's face in Elaine's mind. Evelyn reached back into the box and brought out a thinner file. "After James died," she said, "I started watching your husband." Quietly. She slid a death certificate across the table. "Grace Anderson." She was a real estate agent, Evelyn explained. Helped Jonathan with a few commercial properties. Elaine scanned the document. "Cause of death, accidental drowning. Went for a night swim alone," Evelyn said. "Never came back." She placed another paper on top. "An insurance policy. Beneficiary Jonathan Reed. Amount $250,000. The deals they did together." Evelyn shook her head. Small. Nothing that justifies a policy like this. Lane felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air in the room. "He insures people," Evelyn said quietly, "and then bad things happen to them. Money, policies, accidents, men walking away richer, women not walking away at all." Elaine saw the pattern forming. It reached back from James, through Grace, and forward toward someone else whose name she now knew too well. Sienna Vale. They moved to the living room, papers spread across the coffee table like a crime scene only they could see. Evelyn tapped a pen against the edge of a folder. "He keeps some things at the office, but the most sensitive documents," she said. "Those men always keep at home, where they feel safest." Elaine pictured the study in Pinecrest, the locked cabinet, the drawer where Jonathan hid things he didn't want the cleaning crew to misplace. "Madison's wedding has a rehearsal dinner, right?" Evelyn asked. "At a restaurant by the river," Elaine said slowly. "We'll all be there." "Perfect." Evelyn's voice was calm. "Everyone out of the house. Security system on its usual schedule. We go in while he's busy playing perfect husband and father." She opened a smaller box beside the couch. Portable scanner. External drives. A slim device she said could knock out most home alarm systems for a short window. "You'll show me where the files are," Evelyn said. "We copy everything. Then we get out." Elaine stared at the tools. Her first burglary would be in her own home, to steal back the truth. The rehearsal dinner shimmered under string lights and river reflections. Madison glowed in a simple white dress. Guests filled the room with warm noise. Elaine slipped into the role that had been assigned to her. Mother of the bride. Smile tuned just right. Laugh landing where people expected. Jonathan greeted her like nothing was wrong. He kissed her cheek, pulled out her chair, toasted their years of partnership in a speech that made half the room dab at their eyes. Under the table, her phone buzzed. She glanced down and typed with her thumb. "He's here. You have 2 hours." Madison appeared behind her and wrapped her arms around both parents. "This is all I ever wanted," she said. "My family together, happy." Elaine hugged her back, feeling guilt and resolve twist together. She was about to tear down the picture her daughter cherished, but leaving it intact meant letting a dangerous man keep his mask. Somewhere across town, lights would be turning on in a quiet house in Pinecrest. The stage and the heist were running at the same time. Later, as dessert plates were cleared and guests drifted toward the bar, Jonathan touched Elaine's elbow. "Let's get some air," he said. They stepped onto the balcony. The river moved dark and smooth below. From here, the laughter inside sounded soft, distant. He exhaled. "I've been doing a lot of thinking while you were gone." Elaine waited. "We've grown apart," he said. "We both feel it. The distance, the silence." He paused as if the word hurt him. "I don't want to hurt you, Elaine. After the wedding, I think we should talk about an amicable divorce. Fair, respectful. I'll make sure you're taken care of." He sounded like a man making a business proposal. Calm, practiced. Her mind flashed to the forged mortgage, the offshore accounts, the dead partner, the drowned agent. He wanted to buy her silence, package it as kindness. She forced her face to stay neutral. "You're negotiating with a woman you already killed on paper," she thought. Aloud, she only said, "We can talk, after the wedding." He drove her back to the hotel after the dinner, still talking about transition and new beginnings. She let his words wash past her like static. In the parking lot, her phone buzzed again. She waited until he pulled away to look. A message from Evelyn. "Got everything. It's bigger than we thought." Upstairs, Derek joined their call. They walked her through it. Offshore accounts loaded with money that should have stayed inside Reed Global. Properties purchased in Sienna's name with funds from joint accounts. Layers of paper built to make Jonathan rich if everything collapsed. And then Evelyn mentioned the last file, a life insurance policy. Sienna Vale listed as the insured. Jonathan Reed as beneficiary. A clause buried halfway down the page. Double payout in the event of death during pregnancy. Elaine sat on the edge of the bed, fingers numb around her phone. Grace. James. Same pattern. Now a young woman who believed she had found love and a child who had never asked to exist. Jonathan hadn't just betrayed her. He had become a danger to anyone who loved him. Madison's wedding day dawned bright and soft. In the bridal room, white fabric pooled around her feet while Elaine fastened tiny buttons and smoothed the veil. Madison worried about little things. "What if I trip? What if I cry too hard and ruin my makeup?" Elaine forced a smile. "Then you trip. Then you cry. You'll still be married." Her hands were steady. Her heart was not. She adjusted the veil one last time, then met her daughter's eyes in the mirror. Soon, she said quietly, "Some things are going to change. Whatever you hear, remember this. You are strong enough for the truth." Madison frowned, confused. There was no time to ask more. The coordinator knocked. It was time. Outside, chairs lined a garden aisle. Music rose. Jonathan took Madison's arm and walked her forward. It was a perfect picture. Father and daughter. Promise and joy. Elaine watched them and felt pride and pain collide inside her. They were walking on ground built from his lies. The reception blurred with speeches and clinking glasses. People laughed. People cried. Love sat on every table in the form of flowers and white frosting. After the couple's first dance, the DJ called for the father-daughter dance. Jonathan held Madison close while she rested her head against his shoulder. Elaine watched, knowing her daughter still saw a hero. Then came the call for the parents of the bride. Jonathan offered his hand. Elaine took it. They moved together in slow circles. Applause rippled around them. Friends smiled at the long-married couple who had raised such a beautiful bride. "Thank you," Jonathan murmured, "for not making this harder than it has to be, for agreeing to a peaceful divorce." Elaine looked up at him. His eyes were soft, almost sincere, like the man she'd married. "When did you stop being real?" she asked quietly. "When did you become this—" He blinked, mask slipping for just a heartbeat. The song ended. He kissed her cheek for the cameras. To everyone else it looked like love. To Elaine it felt like a funeral. Guests spilled out into the night in small clusters, laughing as they carried favors and flowers. Madison and her new husband left in a car strung with cans and glittering letters. Elaine stood with Jonathan in the parking area, heels sinking slightly into the grass. "I'll take you back to the hotel," he said. "Or you could come home. We could actually talk. Just us." Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A text from Derek. "Don't go into that house alone." She stared at the screen for a long second, then slid the phone away. "I'll come," she said. One conversation. Relief washed over his face. "Good. We owe each other that much." He drove ahead in his car. She followed in her headlights, chasing his taillights through quiet, familiar streets. As the Pinecrest subdivision came into view, Elaine made herself a promise. Tonight, he would either speak the truth, or he would finally meet the woman who refused to stay silent. The kitchen looked exactly the same. Same blue dish towels, same jar of wooden spoons, same coffee maker humming on the counter. Jonathan poured 2 mugs. The coffee came out dark and bitter like always. "I don't want this to be ugly," he began. "We've had a good run. People change. We can handle this like adults. I want what's best for you." Elaine let him talk, let the words build a gentle cage. Then she cut through it. "When were you planning to tell your pregnant girlfriend you had a first wife who wasn't dead?" The color drained from his face. "Who told you that?" he said. His voice had lost its warmth. She didn't stop. She laid it all out. Sienna. The houses in her name, the forged mortgage on Pinecrest, James Hart, Grace Anderson, the insurance policies, the money off the books, the files now in other hands. "Tell me something," she said. "Were you going to divorce me, Jonathan? Or were you going to make me another tragic accident?" The good husband mask shattered. What stared back at her was cold and dangerous. The silence between them thickened. Jonathan's jaw worked as if he were chewing on every possible lie at once. "You have no proof," he said finally. "Whatever stories these women told you." Her phone wasn't the one that rang. His did. He snatched it from the counter. "Yeah." Elaine watched his face pale as he listened. "Agents," he said. "Search warrants." "That's not possible. There must be some mistake. I'll be there right now." He ended the call with a sharp tap and grabbed his jacket. "What did you do?" he hissed. "Who did you give what to?" Elaine didn't move. "You built this yourself. You think you've won something," he snapped. "You're going to regret this. I promise you that." He stormed out of the front door. Tires screamed against the driveway as his car shot into the street. The house fell quiet. Elaine realized her hands were shaking. She rested them flat on the counter until they calmed. For the first time since this began, he was the one running scared. Not her. The study smelled faintly of paper and cologne. Elaine had dusted these shelves for years without knowing what sat behind the locked cabinet. She found the key where she'd always suspected it was. Bottom drawer, under a stack of old manuals. The lock clicked open. Folders labeled in Jonathan's neat, controlled handwriting waited inside. Taxes, investments, insurance. Her fingers stopped on the last one. She opened it and felt the room tilt. Policyholder Sienna Vale. Beneficiary Jonathan Reed. Her eyes traced the dense paragraphs until they snagged on a single line. Additional benefit in the event of death during pregnancy. Double payout. She took photos of every page and sent them to Derek and Evelyn with a short message. You were right. It's all here. Then she created a new anonymous email, attached the images, typed a single sentence to Sienna. Look up how James Hart and Grace Anderson died. Then check this policy in Jonathan's files. Only when she hit send did she let herself feel the full weight of what she had found. He was planning to cash in on a woman carrying his child. Headlights swept across the front windows 10 minutes later. Elaine's heart kicked hard against her ribs. She moved to the side of the window and peeked through the curtain. The car in the driveway was not Jonathan's. Sienna stepped out, one hand braced at the small of her back, the other holding her phone. Even from the porch, Elaine could see the panic in her face. A knock sounded sharp and unsure. Elaine opened the door. "You're—" Sienna's voice shook. "You're Elaine Carter. He said you died in a car accident." "I hear that a lot," Elaine said. "Come in." She led Sienna to the study and laid the insurance papers on the desk beside the photos Derek had gathered. James. Grace. Headlines about tragic accidents. Bank records showing payouts. At first, Sienna shook her head. Denial rose and fell in her eyes. Then, understanding crashed through it. "He's going to kill me," she whispered, "for money." "He's a danger to anyone who can expose him," Elaine said. "We're not going to let him touch you or your baby." Sienna's phone rang. Jonathan's name lit up the screen. Sienna answered on instinct, putting the call on speaker. His voice came over the line, tight and fast. He said he'd been unfairly detained. He told her to call a lawyer he trusted. He told her she needed to go to the house and clean up some files in his study. Elaine mouthed, "Don't say you're here." Sienna lied for the first time. Said she was at her sister's. Said she would handle it. When the call ended, glass shattered at the back of the house. Elaine snapped into motion. She pulled Sienna toward the kitchen and opened the pantry door. "Get in," she said. "Lock it. Don't open until you hear my full name and my voice. No one else." Sienna's eyes shone wet, but she obeyed. Elaine grabbed the small canister of pepper spray Derek had once pressed into her hand just in case. She also lifted the heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove. Footsteps sounded in the hall. A man in dark clothes stepped into the kitchen. He scanned the room, then smiled without warmth. "Mrs. Reed," he said. "Jonathan sent me to take care of some things." "Did he?" Elaine asked. And, for the first time in a long time, she did not feel small at all. What happened next was fast and ugly. Elaine asked one harmless question to keep him talking. As he started to answer, she sprayed the pepper spray straight into his eyes. He roared and stumbled, hands flying to his face. She swung the skillet low and hard into the back of his knee. Bone met iron. He crashed to the floor, cursing. He tried to rise. She sprayed again. This time, he stayed down, choking. Sirens wailed in the distance. Derek burst through the front door moments later, shouting her name. Police followed, weapons-drawn voices booming commands. The man on the floor was cuffed and dragged away. Later, they would learn he had been paid through one of Jonathan's shell companies. Elaine opened the pantry door. Sienna stood inside, shaking one hand pressed over her mouth. The other still hugged her stomach. "You saved us," she managed. Elaine shook her head. "I saved myself. You just got caught in the same storm." Months blurred after that. Jonathan in an orange jumpsuit, hands shackled. Headlines screaming about a CEO with 2 wives and too many dead accidents in his wake. Madison's tears when she learned late and felt betrayed by both parents. And then the trial. On the stand, Elaine spoke without flinching. Jonathan's lawyers wanted her to soften him, to talk about the early years, to call him a good husband, a good father, to give the jury a reason to shave years off his sentence for Madison's sake. She told the truth instead. She described a man who had once been kind, who had once shown up, who had then chosen lies, money, and control over every person who trusted him. Being good at pretending, she said, doesn't make you good. The jury found him guilty on every count. Months later, at Madison's request, she visited him in prison. He was thinner, older. His voice cracked when he said he was sorry. When he asked if any part of their life had been real, "I loved who I thought you were," she said. "That man never really existed, but the woman you tried to erase. She's more real than ever." Elaine sold the house he had mortgaged behind her back. She started a small business helping women protect their finances after divorce. Madison built a marriage on honesty, not illusion. Sienna raised her child in safety. Evelyn turned her years of grief into a support group. And Elaine carried one lesson forward. You are never just someone's wife. You are someone. And no man, no title, no ring gets to decide if you exist. If this story touched something in you, share it with a woman who needs to remember her own worth. And if you want more stories where women refuse to stay invisible, you're welcome to stay subscribed and keep listening.